How are you?
Keeping it real, keeping it real, keeping it real with Shannon, shining through, laughs and insight, shining so bright. Keeping it real, it feels so right. Real, keeping it real, keeping it real, keeping it real.
Hello and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we're going to have a good hot topic called healing trauma in our community. But let me say hello to my co-host. Hello
Hi,
there.
everyone.
Louie.
Good.
Are you ready for our hot topic tonight? Because I
I
know
am ready.
you are always traumatized.
There's so many crazy people in the world.
So that's going to help you tonight. So want to introduce our guest tonight, which is Miss Antara Rashida Haggins. She's a PhD student. She's a womanist traumatologist, and she's going to explain that to us later. She is dedicated to helping organizations guide their leaders and teams from paralysis to purpose and from trauma to triumph. Create an environment that support healing, empowerment, and success. And that's something that we all need to learn how to put in our life. So let's bring her on now, a special guest. Hello there.
Hello.
How are you? Okay, we're having a technical difficulty here. Are you muted?
I believe you have it on mute.
I'm muted. Hi, how are you? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
Good,
well,
good.
that's
How
okay.
are
Our guest came on muted, but she's off now, and we just want to welcome you to the show because the hot topic tonight is something we really need to discuss because of all the things that's going on now with the crisis and just everyday life. But before we get into hot topic, could you just kind of tell us who Antaria is? What do you do?
So I love Lottie. Lottie has been struggling with my name. It is Antara, right? It is Antara. And so we've been practicing all day, but sometimes that accent is thick. And so I am super excited to be here. And so first and foremost, I am just a child of God, right? I am a servant of God who truly loves the Lord. I am a woman who truly appreciates being able to serve others. And God has gifted me to do that in so many ways. And so I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, right? But most importantly, I am someone who truly wants to see people move into triumphant living. And so I have been to school for my master's, getting ready to embark on this PhD journey, right? Went to Catholic school all my life. I bring that up because sometimes that people are taken aback, right? As an evangelist, that I actually went to Catholic school and that God had used that to expose me to all of the different things that people believe, so that it would be a triumphant tool to help me draw people to Him, right? And so I get to meet people where they are. Wherever that is on their journey. And so that's just a little bit about who I am. I'm a New Yorker all day. I'm definitely a New Yorker. But I travel a lot, so I go between New York and Maryland a lot. But New York is home.
I hear that
Thank
accent.
People call to hear the accent. Sometimes in Baltimore, I'm like, "What's up?" They like, "I just called to hear you talk." I'm like, "Get off my phone." Click.
So our hot topic tonight, as you know, is healing trauma in our community because people are easily get traumatized when something happens, and you're the expert on that. So how should we prepare ourselves, or how do we get through when we are traumatized about something? Because these are all different things that make us traumatized.
So I think it's really important for people to understand what trauma is. I think that people have used the word traumatized so loosely, right? Especially during the pandemic, which was a traumatizing experience, right? But trauma is a response. And so trauma is a deep wound of the heart and the mind that takes a really long time to heal. And so, how do you respond to a situation? And so, everybody responded to the pandemic differently. Unfortunately, some people responded in ways that we can never take back, right? And so that may be suicide or death by suicide. Other people went into despair and depression. Other people were able to use their tools of resilience, right, to help them overcome the challenging times of the pandemic. So, trauma is a response. And so, two people can be in a car accident. One person can say, you know what, I'm never getting in a car again. And that may be their mindset right away. The next person may say it wasn't that serious for me and be ready to get in the car or drive the next day. Again, it all depends on how we respond to what has happened to us. And there are so many contributing factors that dictate whether something is traumatic for us. And so, again, it is about us recognizing that we determine whether something is traumatic to us, right? Which is why we can't judge a person's response to a situation. We can't say you should be over that by now. We can't say, it wasn't that bad because, again, it's a personal response to a situation that may have happened in or out of your control.
Well, how
Mhm.
can you say that, even if you experience something that you think is traumatizing, but then you may think, oh, I'm just going overboard. This is, I shouldn't be really traumatized by this. I mean, how can we just recognize the trauma and then what coping mechanisms can we use to handle that?
So it's about offering yourself grace. So a lot of times we want to say, I shouldn't be overwhelmed by this. I shouldn't be bothered by this. That is shame creeping up on you, right? Trying to squeeze your awareness of how you're feeling at that moment. And so you start to judge yourself, right? So it was a fender bender, right? It should be no big deal. But it doesn't change the fact that seatbelt might have gripped you in a way that caused your heart, right, to stop for a minute, that made your stomach cave for a moment. And unfortunately, when you see that seatbelt, when you see a car, that is the bodily response to a situation. And sometimes our mind may say, oh, it's all right, I could do this. But your body is telling you, I'm not ready to do it. And so
Mhm.
there's this power control shift that you're feeling like, I don't know what to do right now, right? I don't know if I should follow my mind or if I should be following my body. And it's really about, again, being aware, being honest with yourself, and being willing to sit down with those feelings, even though you may not like how those feelings make you feel.
Do you think a lot of, I mean, I know people get scared when something happens. I mean, it's just like with the crisis going on now with people, they was losing funding for the SNAP program. They was, losing funding for other programs that they thought they really, really needed and stuff like that. And, they had to, they weigh the options of whether they was going to fight for health care insurance or for the food. And so people started getting, some of them was actually getting traumatized, which when I thought about it, because I brought this up before, and I says, well, I don't feel that people should get that traumatized over the food because for some reason, I just feel that people can get food. I was more worried about the health insurance and the health coverage and stuff because if you can hardly afford to pay for what you have now, and if it doubles the price, you definitely gonna be traumatized then. But like when something happens, rather than us really getting traumatized, that we should go in a survival mode. Like, how we going to survive? Because you can always figure out a way to survive. And I think that we need, as a people, to start learning how to survive rather than always getting traumatized about everything. And I know people say, "Oh, well, that's easy for you to say, easy for you to say." But I'm just saying, I always look at it when there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm thinking you say it's easy not to be traumatized, but we are human beings at the end of the day, and we have feelings and we are scared, and that's all these feelings, is what I think is causing trauma. It's not that to say that you want to be
No, I'm
traumatized,
not saying that
but
we shouldn't be traumatized, but I'm saying like she said earlier about we need to look at our feelings and start talking about our feelings and saying why are we feeling this way to try to do something about it or whatever, rather than just not trying to do anything because you can't stay traumatized the whole time.
Well, some people do, right? And that's why we have so much of the madness that we see, right? Why we see so many struggles and challenges for people on a day-to-day basis. And so we are human. And so what are the coping methods that are using to deal with the anxiety? So it's not that a lot of people are just traumatized, they're anxious, right? And so that anxiety builds up, right? And so for me, it's about my faith. And that's what I introduce to people when I talk about healing from trauma, right? That God was a wonderful counselor, is a wonderful counselor for me. And it took me having these moments where I sit with God and I unearth the pain that I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that in my prayer closet, right? But we as believers have hope. People in the world, they cope. And people cope with different things to deal with their anxiety. So it's almost like we tell people, don't use drugs, right? We don't want people to use drugs, especially if they're not regulated. But when you go to a doctor, they are more than likely going to give you a regulated drug, right? So we have people who are chemically addicted and mentally ill, which is what we call CAMI. And then we have some people who are mentally ill and they are chemically addicted, right? And so the difference is what you get in the street is not regulated, right? So you don't know what you're taking, but more than likely people have went into addictive behaviors to help them to cope, right? And that doesn't have anything to do with you being a believer or not a believer. That just has everything with you seeking, searching, trying to figure out how do I deal with all of this discomfort, right?
See, that's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. What we need to find ways. And like I say, it's not easy. You know, people say, oh, it's no, it's not easy. But we got to start finding ways to cope. We have to start
Well, that's
finding
something
ways to cope.
internally that you have to find a way to kind of cope. It's just not like the light bulb turns on and all of a sudden you're fine and you're coping with something. It just takes time. Especially, it depends on what the traumatic event was. I mean, it could take a week, it could take a month, it could take years to get where you need to be to cope with it.
Well, no,
But
I don't look at being traumatized or having anxiety or whatever on a timeline. There's nothing on a timeline because it depends on the individual person how quickly they can move on or how quickly they need to change things or do things different or whatever. I'm just saying, like we gotta come up with something, and just like Ontario was saying about your beliefs. See, I know there's a God, and I know plenty of people know there's a God, and I believe there's a lot of believers out there that if you've come this far, everybody have had things happen to them in their life, through death, whatever, and we made it through and whatever. And I feel this too shall pass as well. It's just how do we get through this?
yes, and I mean, well, we can talk about it, after this break.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Oh yeah, it's Shannon.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing to keep us focused.
A habit we never skip, to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game? To drown out the self-doubt and support your mental health. Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mental health. Discover the resources that you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
Oh yeah, it's Shannon. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, on Facebook, YouTube, it's on tonight.
and our hot topic tonight is uh, healing trauma in our community. And before we went to break, we was talking about how do we deal with trauma, that everybody deals with it differently and what we should do. But I'll come back to my same thing again and we move on. But trauma, I know trauma is different for everybody and it happens in different ways. Um, how would you say when something happens with the guilt or the shame, like how do we bring ourselves out of something like that?
So I'm gonna be honest with you. For me, I couldn't do it on my own. And so when we talk about faith without works is dead, the work is not getting up, going to church, frying chicken, making sure that you have the brochures ready, the bulletins ready. Doing the work is, when he says in Philippians 4 and 8 and 9, whatever's lovely, whatever's pure, whatever's noble, think on these things, right? So I call that eat, examine a thought. That is the prescription to examine a thought. You have over 6,000 thoughts coming into your mind a day, right? And so when those thoughts are flying, right, and that's definitely like not accurate. More than 6,000 thoughts are coming through your mind throughout the day. But nevertheless, are you allowing those thoughts to just fly? Or are you allowing yourself to really process and filter through those thoughts? And that's the work, right? Saying, I'm not going to ruminate on what happened on my yesterday. I'm going to meditate on what it is that's right before me. And so for the believer, it's meditating on the word, because we believe those are the prescriptions to our problems. And I think that one of the issues is that as believers, we recognize that suffering is part of the process, but we don't want to have the experience, right? And we want to do everything to negate it. And I'm not saying that trauma is a part of that, right? But we do suffer, right? And trauma is a suffering experience. But again, that's based on your perspective. That's based on your response, right? And so my father used to say to me, life is 90% of how you respond to it, 10% of what happens to you, right? I didn't understand that at 14, 15, 16. I was like, that sounds real good coming from your NA meeting, right? Like, I tell me more, help me understand. But then life happens, right? And when I realized that God had called me to this place of healing to empower people to move from trauma to triumph, I actually understood what my father was trying to tell me. It's my response to life. And God already told me, take heart, right? The world is filled with trouble, but I have overcome the world. What does that mean to me? And that looks different for everybody. So oftentimes it's easy for us to judge someone and say, look, what happened to you, right? If it was me, I would have handled that differently. You don't know what you would have did if your mother would have passed away at 5 years old suddenly and you was raised by your grandmother, right? And so it's not the same because you had an opportunity to be with your mom or your loved one until the end of death because you were prepared. They had lived a long time, right? So there's a different response to that where you may be able to say, okay, I'm grateful I had an opportunity, to be with them and they lived a long life versus the child who lost their mother suddenly or at a very early age and had to navigate through life, right, without that maternal influence or just the idea of saying, I have a mom, right? And so again, it's going back to being able to look as a believer and say, am I really reading the word and then applying the word? Or am I looking at the word and saying, I don't believe that? And we do that all the time, right? The scripture tells us, I have faith, but help my unbelief. We can believe parts of the word, but we don't necessarily always believe all of the word. So again, back to what I said about examining a thought. How often do we take the time and say, I'm not doing this today? I'm not doing this. You don't get to have my thoughts today, right? How often do we look at fear and remember that the word says, I command you to be strong and courageous? Or do we look at fear and be like, yeah, not today, Jesus. Yeah, I'm not able to do that. And so again, it's easy to judge others and say, you should be past that by now. But just like you shared earlier before the break, there's an insecurity for people somewhere and everybody's insecurity looks different. So what is important to you, such as healthcare, may not be as important to someone else who's worried about food security, right? And they may say, look, if I can get food, I can hopefully manage my health. I'm good at making sure that I eat properly. I'm good at making sure that I turn my food into medicine, right? And so again, we have different reasons for why we desire to see certain things occur, whether that is food security, whether that is health with the government. But we all respond to the same things different.
So for someone, you know, it's not that they may not be a believer, but like if when something happened to people sometime, they really just don't know how to handle it. Like they just like just go off the board. They're not handling. So what would you suggest to someone if you see them in that predicament that they, they just can't handle it, or they just not trying to handle it? I don't know which one to say about it, because you try not to be judging people anyway, regardless. But sometimes when things happen, when you're talking to someone, sometimes I feel that you have to talk to them in a way to let them know, look, come on, you got to get strong. You got to believe that things are going to get better. You have to believe that you're going to be better. You have to believe that you can do great things. You know, it's in you. It's in you. You just got to find it.
So I tell people like this all the time. I know the word of God. I love the word of God. But if somebody dies, the first thing I do not want to hear is to be absent from the body, is to be present with the Lord. I'm clear, right? But I also am clear that Jesus wept, and I have a right to my emotions. And I understand that my emotions may make you uncomfortable, but then that's something that you have to deal with. And so oftentimes, I love this by The Crown. Queen Elizabeth's grandmother, there's a scene where Queen Elizabeth is trying to figure out, what do I do? And she says to her darling, the hardest thing to do is nothing. Sometimes you just need to be a ministry of presence for people. Everything is about timing. And so even though you may want to spur someone on to do good deeds, right? And
Right.
just because you want to help somebody throw off the cloak of heaviness and put on a garment of praise, did you pray about the timing? Right? Discernment is key. So if we go back into the word and look at the story of Job, we have a portion in trauma healing, which is some of the work that we do, and we'll discuss that a little later as a triumphant tool. But when we look at the story of Job, we coined that as miserable comforters. Because Job's friends came with all of, well, maybe you did this, maybe you did that, maybe had you did this, maybe if your children would have did that, if you had did this, let's think about it now, right? And so at the end of the day, it wasn't until they just sat and was quiet. The greatest thing they did was say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we just need you to be a ministry of presence, because people can work through the silence, right? I just need somebody to just sit right here. I don't even really need you to tell me it's going to be okay, because it may not be. And you can't guarantee me that. But I can be here with you in it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's okay
So,
or
so you were
Just
saying it's just better to be quiet? Just sit with the person and be quiet?
Well, I think it depends. It depends on the circumstance, and it depends on the person too. Because some people at that moment just probably just needs somebody present just to be there. That's all they need. They don't need you to tell you that everything's going to be all right. I mean, and I love the Lord too, and I have faith. But I still think that too, sometimes that you think to yourself, you're not going to get out of this. You're getting punched every which way and it's never going to end. And so even though you're keeping the faith, you're just trying to work through it. And sometimes that could be tough.
absolutely.
Do you believe that do you believe that sometimes when things are happening to you, like say something is happening to you one right behind the other, or something is going on, don't you ever think that maybe there's a reason these things are happening?
I
If we
do.
don't know what maybe the reason was, but sometimes when we think about it, like you think, like, okay, why does this keep happening to me? Or something like that. I take myself even sometimes, like if something happens to me and then something else will happen to me, I gotta stand still and think like, why is this happening to me? Am I doing something I'm not supposed to be doing? Or, did I mistreat somebody? I stop and kind of start thinking like, what is going on? Am I not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And maybe he's not happy with me with something I'm doing. Like sometimes we just have to sit and think. Sometimes we need to take time and just think.
But God didn't guarantee us that we were going to live a life that was going to be challenge free. And that's the problem. That's a bad theology. To
That's
think
what
that
I'm
every
saying.
time you go through something, it's because God is displeased with you.
Yeah.
God uses suffering to sharpen you, right? And so if you constantly are thinking, oh, well, I'm going through something because I did something, then you ain't never going to really get better, right? And so one of the things we do is trauma healing groups. And so if you go to Restoring the Remnant, rtr.org, you will see that we hold trauma healing groups that help people understand if God loves us, why do we suffer, right? Because of three things. Evil is in the world, right? Creation is corrupted, right? We have damaged creation, right? And so at the end of the day, we have an adversary who is walking to and fro, seeking whom he may devour. If you don't believe in that, then yeah, you're going to automatically blame yourself. But if he told you that many are the afflictions of the righteous, and that helped me understand, oh God, you trying to keep me in right standing with you. Yeah, I'm pushing you in the path. Right? I'm not telling you that I brought that to you. I'm telling you that because you are mine, it's going to work together for your good. But because evil is in the world, this is what's happening to
Can't
you.
avoid it. Yeah.
Right.
Can't
But
avoid it.
what I'm saying is not in the sense that every time something happens to you, you think you've done something to yourself. What I'm saying is that sometimes to me, when things happen, it makes you stronger. You come out of it stronger than what you were when it happened to you. I mean, because I feel like even some things that have happened in my life and stuff, it's made me stronger. It's made me a stronger person that I can see better. Maybe why that happened to me or something like that. Because sometimes I just feel that because we're always going to be going through something. Something is always happening all the time. It's good stuff that be happening to you, and sometimes, just like you say, there's evil in the world. So some things evil is going to be happening to you because every
It's
day
a
is not
process
going to be
to
the
the understanding, right? Even though you're going to come out stronger, you often don't know how to come out stronger because you don't understand the process. And so it's like seeing somebody who's been clean for 20 years. You go into NA the first day and tomorrow you want the 20-year coin. It doesn't work that way. It's a process.
Well, we well, we hope that everyone is able to get through their trauma and learn coping mechanisms for it. And in Tara, we thank you so much for joining us today with that lovely message and information for us.
You're so
Yeah,
welcome.
yeah.
Thank you
We,
for having
we,
me.
we know who to call now when we get traumatized.
Yes,
Okay.
come to some trauma healing groups. We love to have
And,
you all.
and make sure you call her if you get
Yes,
traumatized. You know who to call tonight after you seen her talk
absolutely.
tonight. She's a beautiful person, and you know she has that energy that makes you pay attention to what's going on. And we're gonna hook up with her again soon. And so we just want to thank you for joining us tonight, and hope you got something out of it. And just remember, God is still in charge. I don't care what happened, and you just have to believe that everything is going to be all right. So we want to thank you for joining us and hope you got something tonight. And as always, we'll see you next time.